Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, a truly wonderful guest. Her name, Iris Dankner. And Iris is an interior decorator, breast cancer survivor, and the founder of Holiday House, a charity that supports breast cancer research. Let's all welcome Iris Dankner. And Iris, it is a great joy and a great pleasure to have you with us here on Successful Philanthropy.
Well, first, Jean, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm thrilled to be here and share my story. Holiday House is a designer show house that benefits the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. So it's each year we take a large mansion and we have about 20 to 25 designers. They each come in and design a room from just showing all their talents. And then people walk through, pay a fee that goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, and get all the newest trends and newest ideas in design.
Yes, and it's a very beautiful event with the most gorgeous tables that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm thrilled to be involved as your honorary chair for your Hamptons event this summer. But before we speak about that, what exactly is it that drove you to start Holiday House? Holiday House is a charity. It's a registered 501c3. I know that our audience does not, but what drove you to start this charity?
Well, it's a lot of passion. 25 years ago, at my first routine mammogram, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I say nothing will ever be routine again since then. I was a mother. I had 2 young kids, busy schedule. I had a design firm, and all of a sudden my life just changed. It was also very different back then. It was nobody really spoke about breast cancer. When I went to doctors, when I got all these different opinions, I went with my mom, and everybody thought my mom was the patient. Nobody had ever seen, being 40 and being diagnosed with breast cancer was not your norm. And not your norm was you could not talk about it either. So it wasn't like today where people are open and wear pink and raise money, but I had nowhere to turn. Here I was 40 with breast cancer. I needed a mastectomy and I had no one to talk to. So I found that fundraising was the way to help myself heal. And that's how I got started.
And that's a wonderful story. You took a tragedy, really, you yourself being diagnosed with breast cancer at the young age of 40, and then you decided to do something for others to help with research of breast cancer. And I find that truly, truly extraordinary. And Iris, I don't know where you grew up, but this show airs on Long Island in East Hampton, Southampton, and surrounding areas. And the level of breast cancer on Long Island is considered to be one of the highest in the United States. And for our viewers, I've always wondered why. Is it our water? Is it something in the atmosphere? What's causing this? Iris, do you have any idea? Is this something that you want to discuss, or are you in the same situation I'm in, which is I don't know exactly why?
I could not answer that question with enough certainty, but when a person is diagnosed with cancer, the first thing you think of is how, like what, why? And I did grow up on Long Island, so that's the first red flag. Was it genetic? I went through all genetic testing and there was no genetics involved. So you tend to think that there is something. Was it the water? I had an electrical you know, all those big stanchions outside my window growing up. You know, I can point my finger at so many things, but I do believe it was environmental.
So maybe electric currents you're thinking of. I think in truth, no one really knows what causes breast cancer. Now, I grew up on Long Island. My mother came down with breast cancer. She was much older. She was 65. And then my grandmother, who grew up in Portland, Maine, also had breast cancer. So far, I'm very fortunate, no problems, but each year I get a mammogram and a sonogram. I'm making sure that if there will ever be a problem, and I'm hopeful that there never will be, but I'm making sure that I'm getting tested. Iris, for the audience, how important is it for women to go for their mammograms and sonograms?
I think it's early detection that saved my life. And I feel that women have to be responsible for their bodies. And the more we can talk about it and the more we can relay how important it is to have your mammograms, to do your own self checkups, this is how we're going to save lives.
I couldn't agree more. And so for the women watching this show, please remember to go for your annual checkups, go for your mammogram and sonogram, and don't put it off, because early detection, as Iris said, is very, very important. Switching back to Holiday House, there's a big, exciting event coming up this summer, July 20th. I want you to speak a little bit about it so that people can learn about it and maybe support our event.
Sure. Well, I could even go back a little further and let you know, I started doing all this fundraising after my diagnosis to help myself heal. I felt that was really important. And I started fundraising for Susan G. Komen. I put together a team called Iris's Bosom Buddies. And my children and their friends and all my friends came to support us and came to walk until my team grew to be one of the largest teams that Komen had. Before I knew it, I was on the board of Susan G. Komen and chairing the Race for the Cure. I chaired the Race for the Cure for 3 years in Manhattan, had the honor of greeting those 20,000 women dressed in pink that walked through the park, and it was a life-changing experience. After 3 years, I was invited to be a delegate and to join the Race for the Cure in Egypt. And while I was in Egypt, I learned so much. I learned cancer does not discriminate. Everyone is a target. And seeing women dressed in their burqas, total head to toes with survivor t-shirts pinned to their back, was an incredible moment. We walked from the Sphinx to the pyramids and celebrated survivorship together. And it was at that point I asked Nancy Brinker, how come you started with Egypt instead of doing Israel? And she said to me, well, if you want to take on Israel, you can start the Race for the Cure in Israel. So I spent the next full year in Israel, working with the Knesset, working with the mayor, making sure that the security was right, finding a production company, and we finally put on the Race for the Cure in Israel and ended the day with turning the wall pink. And it was beyond spectacular. So I know I did a little bit, but it has to do with I get back to New York, and now I'm doing all this fundraising. I'm an interior designer, and I have 2 full-time jobs. And it was at that, I say, was my aha moment, how I could take my 2 passions, my love of interior design and my passion to eradicate breast cancer, and how I can combine them and make one event that would raise money to find an end to breast cancer. And that's when I founded Holiday House.
And what year was that?
Well, I was diagnosed in 1997, and that might have been about 2007. I had been doing fundraising for about 10 years before I started Holiday House. It was about 15 years ago.
Very, very nice. And it's a lot of work to start your own charity. Me personally, I serve on 8 boards, and then I'm an honorary trustee of another. And this is a lot of work. But when you start your own charity, I think you have even more of a responsibility because you really have to watch over expenses. You have to make sure you have low overhead, and everything has to be done just perfectly. Now, of course, as a board member of a charity, you have to be very, very serious about the charity, and the charity, any charity has to be run like a business. So did you learn as you went along, Iris, or what was it like to start your own charity?
It was interesting because my journey started, I went to Carnegie Mellon University School of Art. So I definitely have an artist's head, not a business. So it was a challenge for me, but a very interesting challenge because there was passion behind it and I was really wanting to learn. I learned a lot at Susan G. Komen about the percentage, the ratio of your spending to what you're going to make and how important that is. And then taking it to Holiday House has been very tricky because you're working with the design industry whose taste level is so high and everything has to be done to perfection, but you have a zero budget. So that always is the challenge, is how to make it look like, you know, money is no object, but the money we are raising goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. We don't want to go into expenses. So it has been an interesting challenge.
And you've done a very good job. My understanding is that you've donated about $1 million since the inception of your charity to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Is that correct, Iris?
That's correct. And I also have to praise my daughters, founded another non-for-profit called Tickled Pink. And they wanted to help other children whose moms had been going through breast cancer. And with the support of Diane von Furstenberg, they hosted for 8 years a fashion show of cancer survivors with their children. And they raised over $1 million also. So yes, between what I've done for BCRF, what my children have done, and then sharing the Race for the Cure locally and globally, it is millions.
And I think this is really a true success story of a woman who unfortunately came down with breast cancer, was passionate about supporting research for breast cancer, and went out and started her own charity after learning the ropes at another charity, and then has her daughters involved. Her daughters started their own charity too, all to help with breast cancer. Iris, I love this story and I love what you've done because it is so important for all of us, not only to be philanthropists, but to teach the next generation how to be philanthropists. I wrote a book on philanthropy, Successful Philanthropy, How to Make a Life by What You Give. And I speak about this in depth, how we have to cultivate the next generation. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is to teach your children to be kind and to share. And then you serve as a good role model. Get involved in a cause, something that speaks to you, and then get your children involved. This interview is not about me, it's about Iris Dankner. So we will go back to Iris. And Iris, moving on, you do beautiful, beautiful events. I was involved with your winter event as an honorary chair this past December in New York City. The tabletop event was absolutely exquisite. Money was raised for breast cancer research. Now you have a summer event. Talk about the summer event in the Hamptons.
Well, we started out as doing full designer show houses. And as you know, through COVID, like many other non-for-profits, it was important to keep your brand alive while people were donating to COVID, which of course was high priority to everyone. I still wanted to keep my brand alive. So we had to pivot. And that was the key word at that point, was how do you pivot and make sure that you can keep your staff involved? And that was when we turned to doing a tabletop event. I felt it was the way that we could still include the same amount of people. Now, the industry was suffering. You couldn't get home furnishings. The furniture wasn't being delivered. There were just too many restrictions to do a full show house. So we decided to make it a tabletop event for two reasons. It was easier for designers to get tabletop merchandise, and it was also celebrating that we were back at the table together, because I think that's like what my family, most families miss, being together, all those holidays we miss, and just being able to celebrate that we were back. So that's how the holiday tabletop show was conceived.
Yes, now the event is July 20th. Talk about that a little bit, and how can our viewers purchase tickets?
Well, you can go online, Holiday House Show, and donate, buy a ticket. Tickets are $250. Or you could just click and make a donation to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. The event is at Topping Rose House, which, as everyone knows, is a spectacular setting. And we will have 15 different design firms, designers, stores that will be designing different tabletops. You're guaranteed to learn so much to add a little like fun to your tables.
Yes, and the event is a lot of fun. I know I attended last year and I absolutely loved it. And that's when you asked me to get involved, that's why I got involved. I liked, number one, the event was very well done. Number two, I loved the cause that you were funding a breast cancer research. For our audience, we are with Iris Dankner, and Iris is the founder of the Holiday House. She is a breast cancer survivor and a real dynamo. Iris, getting back to you and getting back to your situation as a breast cancer survivor, what advice would you give to anyone who comes down with breast cancer and maybe is feeling very blue about her future? What advice would you give? And I know today now most cancers are curable, and this is very, very encouraging, but what advice would you give?
Well, first of all, I always say we don't just survive, we thrive. And when you're diagnosed, you know you're in for a rocky road ahead, but you hang on. I always say a woman is like a tea bag. She doesn't know how strong she is until she gets into hot water. And just plow through it. You can get through it. And now you could talk about it. You could talk about it. There are so many different places to go for support groups, to speak to others, to volunteer. When I was diagnosed, it's 25 years already, nobody talked about cancer. People thought it was contagious. Nobody talked about it. And part of my mission was wanting to teach my daughters that the more comfortable we are with our bodies, the more we can talk about it, the more earlier we're going to be diagnosed, number one, but we want people to be comfortable and speak about it. So today you can. You couldn't then. I remember not being able to tell anyone at the kids' school. I didn't want my kids to be embarrassed that their mom had breast cancer. So look how much progress we've made in 25 years. When you think of everything from the NFL to the stores, everybody in October who supports breast cancer. We could talk about it now. So we've made so much progress.
Yes.
And hopefully anyone being diagnosed now will be diagnosed early, because they will be going for their routine mammograms and giving themselves their own checkups.
Yes, and for someone who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, Stony Brook Southampton Hospital has support groups. The Ellen Hermansen Foundation, which is also based out here on the eastern end of Long Island, also can be very helpful. Get involved and if you need the support, go out and get that support. I understand that the event on July 20th will also benefit the Ellen Hermansen Foundation, and that's a very, very nice charity. I'm also involved with that charity. And why did you choose the Ellen Hermansen Foundation to also benefit?
Well, Jean, I think, like myself, we are both lovers of Julie Ratner. Julie, I can't say enough about her, and her journey is just one that touched me, that she also took her lemons and made lemonade. And she is really a rock star. First of all, growing up on Long Island, I feel whatever I could do to support our local groups is so important. But Julie just makes you want to help, want to reach out, want to join her events. I can't wait to be at her walk and bring Iris's bosom buddies to her walk. So I think it's important to donate locally. As far as the bigger picture, also to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, but to the Ellen Hermansen is very close to my heart.
Yes, and it's a wonderful charity. And Julie Ratner is the founder of the Ellen Hermansen Foundation. And the Ellen Hermansen Foundation supports Southampton Hospital's efforts to work with breast cancer survivors, and also supports other groups. Wonderful, wonderful charity. And Iris, it's so nice that Holiday House not only supports the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, but also supports the Ellen Hermansen Foundation. And for our audience, again, we are with Iris Dankner. She is the founder of Holiday House, a charity that supports breast cancer research. Iris, as you look back on all the things you've done, what is the one thing you're most proud of?
Wow, that's an interesting question. One thing? I guess I love teaching that there is no dream. Like, I had a dream to create Holiday House. And I remember the night that I told my husband and my two young daughters, Mommy has an idea. And everybody kind of rolled their eyes a little bit, like, here goes Mommy again. And I can now say that dream big, make your dreams come true. And anything you want is possible if you work for it. Holiday House has grown beyond my expectations. And it's because of the love and the support of people like you, Jean, that it has. And so I guess the thing I'm most proud about is that I could say I've taught a lot to young children and to other breast cancer survivors.
Also very, very important. And Iris, I look at you as a great role model for others to follow, because here you were, a woman who came down with breast cancer, and then you went out and started your own charity to help others. And this is an amazing accomplishment. You are a true philanthropist, and you are a very, very good woman. Now, what advice do you give to young people just starting careers? We've been through a pandemic. The pandemic is not over yet. And as we continue to move forward, what's your advice to young people who maybe had an interruption in their career because of the pandemic and who maybe are struggling right now?
It's interesting you say that. My advice would be, life is a journey. It's clearly a journey. From where you start out, like graduating from high school or from college, to where you end up. And you have to just ride with it. I mean, I've had so many different chapters, and you are in control of your next chapter to make. You might be disappointed that things had to be changed during the pandemic or things were put on delay, but hang on to that dream and you can make it happen. I mean, it is difficult when I think of all the twists and turns my life has made, and life throws you. I say, it's not the cards. What is it? It's not the cards you're dealt. It's how you play your hand. And just keep on being positive, and you can make what you want come true.
And Iris, for our audience who want to get involved in Holiday House and maybe want to attend the July 20th event at Topping Rose in Bridgehampton, New York, what is the website once more time?
holidayhousehamptons.com. And you can also Instagram me. You can Instagram me personally at Iris Dankner. I would love to speak more with anyone who wants to get involved or anybody who's struggling and just needs someone to talk to. Please. But the event on July 20th is a lot of fun. It's great networking, it's great fun, and we're raising money for a great cause. So I hope you can all attend.
Thank you, Iris. Iris, you have been one of our most inspirational guests. Now, all of our guests inspire, but today's story of a woman, Iris Dankner, who has started her own charity after having breast cancer to support breast cancer victims, is truly a wonderful, wonderful story and so inspirational. Thank you.
Jean, thank you for all your support, because having you work with us has made a big difference, and we love having you as our honorary chair.
Thank you, Iris. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. Our guest today, Iris Dankner. She is the founder of Holiday House. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.